Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Your chair.
A little bit of noise in the background doesn't matter. You can tell that your dad's in the background being noisy.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Alright guys, so my dad and I are working on the shovel head still, of course. And we've actually got some stripped out holes in our engine case as well as the transmission gear case. So we're gonna fix them, and we have kind of our own way of doing this. Well, it's a way that my dad has actually done before. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna make our own threaded steel inserts to fix these stripped out holes with on the engine case. So we've already done a few, we've drilled and tapped them, and we've got a couple more to do. So I wanted to show you guys how we're doing this, what we're using and how we're set up for it. And before you start asking, why aren't you just buying threaded steel inserts to fix your stripped out holes with? Well, one of the reasons is because we want to be able to use the proper size or the size that we want. And the biggest reason is because the threaded steel inserts that you can buy don't come with as much thread as what we would like to use. So the threaded steel inserts that you would buy come with about half the thread as with inserts that we're going to be making. And we just kind of like being able to use as much thread as possible, especially when we're bolting parts onto a rattly Harley engine. So we're all set up in the drill press to start doing this drilling, and I'm just going to explain to you guys how we're doing it as my dad does the drilling, and hopefully this can help some of you guys out. Okay, so I've just got my alternator just bagged off here because we want to keep any metal shavings and dust off of that. So I've got that all sealed up. We did start with this hole. We kind of just wanted to do a bit of a test run before we started going all crazy on here. So this hole has been drilled and tapped already because we gotta tap the holes out now to the appropriate size for the inserts that we're making. The other holes here, like this one and this one, are pretty stripped out. I don't know if you can see just the difference in size between that one there and the one on top, but you can see pretty clearly from where I'm sitting that those are pretty stripped out. So I've got the proper size bolt here that should thread into the case. I'm just gonna thread that in just to show you guys just how stripped out these are. If I can get it to thread in there with my left hand. There we go. So you can see this one just threads in nicely. It fits nicely in there. Now if I take this out, go down into this hole, just slides right in. So these holes are pretty stripped out. That one's pretty bad. This one was the worst of them. This one, as I said, we've already drilled and tapped it, so that one's ready for an insert already. But we're gonna drill and tap these other two and make inserts for them also. And we are all set up to do that right now. I'll show you guys the couple that we've started already, and then I'll just explain to you guys what we're doing as we do it. So these are the inserts that we've already started working on. These two have got the primary bolts or the size bolts that we're going to be using threaded into them already. And then this is just one that I just wanted to show you guys just how it's tapped. So you can see that that's tapped out. And then this is one that we haven't drilled yet, but we do have our center punch mark on there. You want to make sure that everything, if you're doing this, is pretty exact because you don't have a whole lot of material left by the time you've got it drilled and tapped, as you can see. So you want to make sure this stuff is centered as you can get it. So we are just got one going in the drill press right now. We're going to start on that, and you guys can just see the stages, and then at the end I'll show you guys how we finish this off and get it to all work properly in the engine case. So we're set up in our drill press here with our centering bit. So we're just going to start our hole with the centering bit, and then we will do the remainder of the hole with our proper sized bit. We are using 7/16 coarse thread bolts to make the inserts with, and then we are drilling them out with a 17/64 drill, and we're just using a 5/16 fine thread tap. So my dad's just starting this drill now, and when we're using drill bits, when we're drilling in our drill press, we like to use our our used engine oil because it helps preserve those bits. And thank you, Matt, for these centering bits. They came just in time for this little project. We've actually got a 4-jaw chuck from a lathe that we're holding everything centered with. We'll start the hole with the centering bit and then we can finish it off with our 17/64 bit. Now he's just doing the hole to prepare for the tap. Alright guys, so we're just going to tap this now, and we are going to tap it by hand, but we're going to start the tap procedure in the drill press. We're not going to turn the drill press on. We actually don't even have the belts hooked up. So we've got everything opened up here, and we have the belts unhooked from the pulleys there because we are just going to hand turn the drill press because we don't want to wreck anything by just powering through it with the drill press. So we'll just get the taps started in there, and that's just to make sure that everything stays straight, and then we will finish tapping that the rest of the way by hand in the vise on the bench. Alright guys, so these are the studs now. We've got them all drilled and tapped. We have 4 for the engine case, and then we've got 4 here for the transmission. We're using grade 8 for the engine case, and then these are grade 5 bolt that we're using for the transmission. We just like grade 8, but I don't think it really makes a big difference. So this is what they look like finished, drilled and tapped. And then we're going to put these into the engine case. We're going to use a little bit of green Loctite and then snug them in with a wrench, so it's nice to have the head of the bolt still on there. And then once they are in there, then we'll just cut the head of the bolt off with a cutting disc and a die grinder. So that'll be that. And as you guys can see, the proper size primary bolt threads right into there very nicely. And we went almost all the way through, but we just didn't go through the head of the bolt because we don't need to. So I guess whatever you are using this for is going to depend on how deep of a thread you're going to need. And then this is how we had it set up in the drill press. I already showed you guys our lathe chuck that we were holding everything with. I didn't show you guys this yet though. So this is actually a piece of aluminum that is the center from a hole saw cutting, which we've drilled the proper sized hole in for the bolts to go through. And you want to make sure that your bolt is sitting in there nice and snug. You don't want a hole that's way too big for the bolt. And then we just have it sitting in the aluminum. We're using a nut to lock it in there just to keep everything from moving while we drill through. And we cleaned up our edges too so that everything is nice and smooth and even, so that everything just clamps nicely into the lathe chuck. And what this does is it just gives us some stability for the bolt so that we don't have to worry about the bolt being off tilt like this either way. So this will actually hold the bolt straight up and down and make sure that our holes all end up straight. And yeah, it really worked out well. So that's it for the studs. Now it's just time to put them in the case and finish this job. All right guys, so we've got 3 more holes to drill and tap on the engine case here. We already did one off video, and what we're using for this is a 23/64 drill bit to drill the holes, and then we're using a 7/16 coarse thread tap to tap them out. One thing that's very important is you want to make sure that your stator is sealed off so that you don't get any kind of metal fragments inside your stator. And then my dad's going to drill out these holes and tap them, and then we'll be ready to put the studs in. Alright guys, so these holes are all drilled and tapped out, and I cleaned them all with some brake cleaner, dried them out really well because you want to make sure that it's all clean in there and dry so that the Loctite will actually work. So now we're ready to just thread these slugs in there and Loctite them in and just finish it up by cutting off the ends of the bolt. And we actually used 2 different taps. So we used a tapered tap, a tap with a slight taper on it to get the hole started, and then we made sure to could use a bottoming tap just so that we're actually getting thread all the way to the end of the hole, because we want as much thread in there as we can get. And then with the 1/4 inch extensions, we're actually using them just to get a little bit of clearance, so you can actually put your tap into the 1/4 inch extension there if you have a tap with a 1/4 inch end on it. And we just needed to get a little bit of clearance around the crankshaft here when we were tapping some of these holes with the longer tap handle. So that helps if you've got some 1/4 inch extensions and you're able to do that, then that just helps to get a little bit of clearance on what you're working on. So we're just snugging down the first couple bolts here, and we're actually using green Loctite because it's stronger than red Loctite, and we don't plan on ever taking these out again because they're just going to be a permanent fixture in the engine case at this point. So you don't want to use too much Loctite either, because first of all, you don't need a lot of Loctite for it to work, but most importantly is you don't want to have a flood of Loctite inside of your bolt hole there so that it actually comes back up into the center thread where you're going to be bolting your primary on, because you don't want to end up having those bolts Loctited in there as strongly as what these slugs are going to be in the case. Those are all in there now. They're just going to take a minute to dry, and then we are going to be cutting them off with the cutting disc. So now to trim the ends of these bolts where we just cut the bolt head off of, we're just using an oversized drill bit.
Do we have a new fresh battery for it?
Well, like all these batteries are probably kind of dead because of how long they've been sitting in here for.
Put this on the
Try this one. And after using that oversized drill bit to just do the final trimming on those slugs, we're just using the proper size tap now just to clean up the little bit of a burr that collected in the ends of the slugs there. Alright guys, so now we've got a nice fine thread steel threads in our engine case, which is actually an advantage over the coarse thread that we would have had just in the aluminum on the case, because these will actually be a lot stronger. They're not as likely to wear out and end up having the same issue that we just corrected here by making these slugs. And it's nice and it's threaded all the way to the bottom of the hole, which is what we want. The more threads the better, especially on a Harley and especially on the engine, because you don't want anything shaking loose. That is it for the engine. We got the engine case done, and then we also did some in the tranny case because it had some stripped out stud holes, and they are looking pretty good and they're going to be pretty tough. I think it was a job well done, and it went off without a hitch. So that is our thread fix, guys. I hope that you guys found this useful, and if you like what you see, or if you just like me, or even if you don't like me but you like my bikes, and like this video, comment, subscribe to all those things you guys do, and like always, I will catch you all on the flip side. Peace. Heater.
Flashlight? You gotta get into the breaker panel.
Hey Siri, turn my flashlight on.
Okay, I turned flashlight on.
Probably in the other panel.